Hey everybody, Sarah here. So today I'm going to be doing a Q&A where I answer your questions that you have asked me on my YouTube channel in the comments. So if you guys have any questions that are not addressed here, feel free to leave them in the comments of any of my videos and I will go back through the comments that were left the previous month and do this sort of Q&A question answer type of video. Before we jump in, I just want to thank all the members on this channel who make everything possible. You guys are amazing. If anybody else would like to become a member, we have two different tiers right now. We have the Neonates tier and the Well Started tier. Neonates tier is $2 a month and then the Well Started is $5 a month. And you get different perks depending on which tier you are in. So if you'd like to check that out, you can click the join button down below. Also, I just want to thank Reptilinks for helping to support this channel as well. If you'd like to use my code SarahSnake27 at checkout at Reptilinks.com, it will get you a discount and I also get a little money back from your purchase as well. I also have a website, sarahssnakeshop.com, if you would like to check that out. I sell corn snakes and corn snake accessories. Right now, we still have a nice handful of caramel tesseras from last year if you are looking for a well-started snake and you're not wanting to get just like a tiny baby that is a little more fragile. We definitely have some nice well-started babies on that website for you. Alright, so I'm going to jump into the questions. The first question that we have is if you breed, let's say, an Okatee to a buckskin or a Miami, which would be dominant? And so the answer to this is neither of them is really going to be dominant per se. So think of it in terms of people. If you have someone who is really dark skinned and they have children with someone who's really light skinned, the babies are going to have kind of a varying mix of in between. Some might still be very light skinned, some might be very dark skinned, some might be an even mix exactly. And so it's the same thing if you breed two different kinds of like normal corn snake, which Okatee is considered a morph, but it's not a mutation. So when we talk about morphs, we're talking about any variation from just the normal. And so we have like Okatee phase, which has those really thick borders. We have Miami phase, which has the really light ground color. So if you mix an Okatee with a Miami, you might get a nice mix in between. You might get some that look like Okatees. You might get some that just look Miami. You might get some that just kind of look like normals. You might even get some that are nice like mix of Okatee Miami as well. So there's no really way of calculating it as if we were calculating like if we bred a snow to an amelanistic. It's just not something that we can calculate in the same way. And that's actually what we call polygenic or selective breeding. Those are two kind of very similar concepts that kind of equal out to the same type of breeding expectations. The next question is, are morphs really popular? What if someone wants a normal, and what would I say to that person? So yes, morphs are really popular. A lot of people like to have these sort of odd looking snakes. I remember my very first corn snake that I only had for a brief amount of time because at that time I was really young, didn't really know how to take care of them. But it was a snow, and I thought I've never seen a pink snake before. That's really cool. And so I think that for a lot of people, they're kind of a stepping stone to actually getting into having pet snakes in general. And a lot of people just like the cool colors. Like I love caramels, anything caramel. I just love it. I love the idea of a yellow snake as well. So yeah, a lot of people really like morphs, and that's why there's so many morphs being bred and produced and sold. However, you can find normals. So there are a lot of different normal types. I have a like wild type, normal type video if you guys would like to go watch it, just to sort of see all the variation of normal that we have. Now, technically Okatee is a type of normal. Technically Miami is a type of normal. Keys is a type of normal. But we could talk about those in the morph sense because they're not the normal. So the normal is just going to be, I'll put a picture over here. It's just going to be your typical like nondescript wild type corn snake. There's nothing specific about it that sticks out really. So it's not that it has a really light ground color, or it's not that it has thick borders. It doesn't add or extra pigment or take away extra pigment. Like there's nothing special about it necessarily. And there are plenty of those. So there's different ways to get just regular old normals. You can go to a breeder, even breeders who have a lot of morph projects. If you just want a normal and you don't care what other genes it might carry, like let's say you just want a normal as a pet, you can go to breeders who have big projects, and there's a good chance that they're going to have normals, because breeders like to breed things like, let's say you have an avalanche and you want to breed it to an amber, because eventually you want to take those offspring and breed them back together. When you first breed that avalanche to that amber, you're going to get pretty much all normals, maybe some masks depending on the avalanche. So you're going to get a bunch of just normals out of that. And the breeder may only hold back like maybe 2 to 5 of those. And especially if you have a clutch of like 15 or more, they're of course going to be selling off some normals. So yes, you're definitely going to be able to easily find normals. If you want normals that you know have no other background genetics, there are also people who are authorized to go catch corn snakes and resell them in the wild. And you can probably find like babies that were just recently hatched in the wild if you want to do something like that. And of course, there are also people who just really enjoy breeding these sort of wild lines. So if you are looking for a pure wild Miami line, you can find that in some breeders. If you want a pure wild Okatee line, you can find that with some breeders as well. So there's definitely a lot of options when it comes to just getting normals, if that's what you want. So the next question is basically, is Okatee a morph or like a different species? How does this work? And essentially, it's definitely not a different species. We're definitely still talking about the same species, but it is different because it's a locality. So if you have two different snakes that are the same species and they're really far apart from each other, they are going to adapt to the area that they are in. So basically, if you have two corn snakes that are the same species, but you have like breeding colonies that are really far apart from each other, let's say you have some in Florida and then obviously some in like South Carolina, those are going to look different because they are adapting to different environmental needs. So for example, in Miami, Florida, the corn snake colors that seem to have done the best is that silvery ground color with the kind of brick red saddles, and that's why Miami's look the way they do. Whereas in the Florida Keys, which is pretty far away, you have snakes that are more orangey and have less pattern change. So you do see a big contrast even in a relatively small area. They're both in the same state. They are pretty far apart in the same state, but that's just to give you an idea of like, these do vary quite a lot, even though they are the same species. And it's the same thing with people. Like, I use people as an example because we really are a pretty good example of that history, the archaeological history, that those who like their colonies were in Africa, they have darker skin, but when you move up north into the sort of European area, their skin got lighter because it was different environmental pressures put on the human species. So yes, we're the same species, we're just different colors, and that's the same thing with corn snakes. They're the same species, they just have different pressures in different areas of the country, and that's why they look different. This next question came from my corn snake feeding tips. So if you have a trouble feeding corn snake, this is one of the videos that I made for that specifically. And someone asked, do I just put the pinky in boiling water or with the wrapper still on? And I've done a video on exactly how I boil them. Try to link things up above, but forgive me if I forget. I just put them in the boiling water. I will actually often boil water in I have just like a water boiler thing that has like a pitcher, and there's a thing at the bottom that boils the water, and I just pour that over the pinky mice and then sort of just like let the outside cook a little bit. Now you want to make sure this is frozen thawed pinky mice. You do not want to do this with live pinky mice. That's cruel. Do not do that. But if you have the frozen thawed, just pour some boiling water over it till the skin turns slightly gray, and that is an excellent way to get a lot of trouble feeding babies to eat. In fact, the majority of the breeder friends that I have, that's their first go-to when they are trying to get picky baby snakes to eat. And that is going to be the end of this Q&A. I hope that this helped you guys. Like I said, if you have any other questions, please let me know in the comments, and I will put that maybe in a future Q&A. I also do tend to answer the questions directly in the comments as well. So don't feel like you have to wait a whole other month to get your question answered. I keep track of the comments and I go through and answer them as they come. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in a new video soon.